Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Salebox for the 24th of June 2014. My name is TotalBiscuit, rounding up today's Steam deals. Apologies that we're a little bit late today. Things in real life got in the way, but otherwise, let's get on with it. As usual, these deals will be around for around 48 hours. Although by this point, it's more like 38, but you get the idea. And if you want to check out yesterday's deals, the Salebox from yesterday is available, and the deals can be found all the way down beneath the community choice and the summer adventure image. So, let's kick it off with the first one. Call of Duty Ghosts, 50% off. Yay! Of $60. So, it's still bloody expensive, is the answer to that. And that's discounted a mere few months before Advanced Warfare comes out. Yeah. Alright. As usual, Activision with the terrible deals. That's really what they do when it comes to their big titles in particular. And Ghosts really is not doing all that well. It's not even in the top 25 games being currently played on Steam, if you can believe that. It's actually below Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Phantoms. It's not even in the top 50 in terms of how many games are currently being played on Steam. Right now, it's actually 75th. Wow, it's unbelievable when you think about it. It is not a popular game at all at the moment. Indeed, Black Ops 2 is significantly more popular, and rightfully so, because it's better. It is a better game. It's a better port, it runs better, it has more content, it has more interesting content. Yeah, really, Ghosts is a very hard sell at this point. The PC port is terrible. I've told you about that before. It ran like absolute arse, and it didn't look good either. They finally added a field of view slider into the game. It took them bloody well long enough to do it. It took them about 6 months to patch that in, so you can see how much they really care about PC. And of course, there was a mere 36 pieces of DLC available for this, so... I mean, you know my opinion on Ghosts already. Call of Duty is occasionally pretty fun for multiplayer, but right now, Ghosts is not worth that. And if you're going to get a Call of Duty game for multiplayer at the moment, you still want to be looking at Black Ops 2, because it's just better. Now, there is also discounted, but still only 50% on that. So it's still $30 or your regional equivalent, which frankly is not worthwhile. Now, Call of Duty Ghosts is a solid pass from me, especially at that price. Age of Wonders 3, 50% off. Not a massive discount, but this game has only been out for a few months, so you can give them a little bit of credit for that, and it also wasn't a full-price release either. It was originally around $40. This is a 4X strategy game, fantasy-based specifically, in which you expand an empire, you are able to research technology, get upgraded units, and also acquire heroes, which can be geared out with a wide variety of different items. It has a really solid campaign, a bunch of different factions, a bunch of different hero types to use, which gives you a great deal of replayability and an awful lot of depth. In fact, the depth of this game is phenomenal, especially when it comes to hero customization. It's got a lot of fun units as well. They really don't skimp. You've got things like flame tanks and land ships alongside a myriad of different kinds of dragons and orcs and elves and all sorts of really wonderful things. And the game's meat comes in its hex-based, turn-based strategy elements, which are very strategic. They remind me a smidge, just a smidge, of Heroes of Might and Magic, although a little bit more of Fantasy Wars and Elven Legacy at this point. It's really, really good, honestly. It's got a very solid campaign. It has certainly workable multiplayer, and it's got a lot of replayability going along with it. It also happens to have a level editor, so there's a lot going on for it in terms of maps. There could be hundreds of hours of enjoyment for you if you are the kind of person that loves fantasy turn-based strategy games, which is exactly what Age of Wonders is, and it's a really solid entry to a fairly venerated series, and one that certainly deserved another title to be added to its list. Very, very good. Extremely fun. Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, 80% off. Buy this game, 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 buy this game. This is maybe one of the only excuses that people had not to pick this up. I know. I've talked about this a lot, and I still genuinely believe that Brothers is the best game that I've ever played. And I've told you why many times before. Two reasons, actually. One, it's probably the only game to make a real kind of emotional connection with me as a player, as someone that is very mechanics-focused. And secondly, it's one of the only games to ever tie the mechanics into the storytelling in such an organic and natural fashion. It really blurs the line between a storytelling experience and something that you control and something that is genuinely interactive. It's extremely impressive. It's only a few hours long, can be done in about 2, sometimes 3, depending on how long you spend it. And it's not very difficult either. And frankly, you should be playing it with a controller. That's what it was designed to do, since you control each brother with one of the analog sticks, meaning that playing it with a mouse and keyboard is not a great experience. But if you can get past all that, for a tiny, tiny price, you will experience what is hopefully going to be a very enjoyable game for you. I absolutely adored this. It's just so good. It tells a very simple story, but a very emotive one, and it does so in a way that, in my opinion, isn't even the slightest bit pretentious. It tells the story through the gameplay, the way that games should be. So, you owe it to yourself, I think, to put aside a couple of hours and a couple of dollars to try this one out. Torchlight II, 75% off. A very frequently discounted title, but something that's worth picking up if you happen to like hack-and-slash RPGs with a focus on loot. Developed by some of the guys that made the first Diablo. Oh yes, Runic Games, some of the ex-guys from Blizzard North. They made a game called Torchlight. It was pretty good, but it was only single player. It was kind of basic. Like, it was more of a proof of concept for this, which is Torchlight 2, which is both multiplayer and a hell of a lot better. I still like this more than Diablo 3, even with Reaper of Souls, and I like Diablo 3 with Reaper of Souls. I think it was a really good set of changes. They improved that game a lot, and I still think Torchlight 2 is a better game, frankly, especially bearing in mind the story of Diablo 3 is basically worthless, which is the same as Torchlight 2, which has a forgettable story as well. But in terms of an experience of more traditional character customization in terms of the skills that you pick and the talent trees, and smashing up hundreds and thousands of creatures to get really awesome rewards, Torchlight 2 is just that. It's packed with content, the price is absolutely right, the multiplayer is great, it has a proper single player and LAN mode available, so if you've got any concern about the always on, you don't need to, and it's got a healthy modding scene. And I would recommend, if you've played through it and you need a little bit more content, there are some really nice mods. The most popular of those probably being the Synergies mod, which actually won Best Overhaul Mod of 2013 on ModDB, so congratulations to them for that. They have done so much stuff with that. Raid bosses and new classes and tiered equipment pieces. Yeah, it's really, really awesome. I will defend Torchlight 2 to the death. There's not a lot wrong with that game, unless, of course, you're either not into the more traditional way of doing these kind of things, or you're really looking for a story-driven experience. If I had one complaint about it, which is kind of minor, it's that a lot of the skills are rooted, meaning that you can't move while you're doing them. Diablo 3 did away with a lot of that, which did mean the combat felt a little bit more fluid, but I would say, as a result, Torchlight 2 manages to feel a little bit weightier as a result of rooting a lot of those skills to the ground and putting a very slight bit of delay in there. But yeah, for that price, it's hard to argue with. Blackguards, I don't want, no, whatever you want to call it, I personally couldn't give a damn. 66% off. We had so many arguments about that name. I'm not going to engage them anymore. Okay, so this is basically a strategy RPG. It's a role-playing game where the focus is on the hex-based battles and taking your party, which of course can be heavily customized, up against a wide variety of fantasy nasties. What it really has going for it, in my opinion, is the fact that the writing is quite good and fairly humorous, and the world is reasonably original. So that is certainly pretty good. It's a little bit samey, certainly. If you're not into the battle system, then you're going to absolutely hate the game, and the battles can certainly drag on for a while. It's based in the Darkeye universe, for those who don't know. You might not be familiar with Darkeye. The character customization could perhaps be better, if anything. If I was going to complain about something, it would probably be that, but outside of that, it's got a good amount of content, and it will hopefully give you an enjoyable experience for what is basically a strategy RPG. It'll last you about 25-30 hours, maybe, give or take. Just bear in mind the actual RPG elements of it are fairly light. There aren't actually that many choices to make, and there isn't that much character interaction to have. It's mostly about the battles. So if battles are what you're looking for, then you will find it here. If they're not, then you can safely avoid. Fallout New Vegas Ultimate Edition, 66% off. Yep, I would get that one, frankly. Now, there's been times when I've recommended New Vegas on its own. This is not going to really be one of those times, because all the DLC is, of course, out for this, and this is a really, really good price. If for some reason you are really short on funds, then New Vegas is still very well priced, but most of the DLC for New Vegas is really good, and it integrates itself very nicely into the world. And of course, you probably need a bunch of it for the mod scene as well. So I would, at that point, probably just suggest getting the Ultimate Edition. It will come with all of the add-ons, and that is very much worth playing. That's 4 large add-ons, by the way. As usual, Obsidian does a great job with really interesting quest lines and characters, and that's something that Bethesda, I think, pretty much failed in when it comes to Fallout 3. There were some, certainly, but I certainly feel that New Vegas was a better experience. There's a lot more variety to be had there in terms of skills, gunplay, the kind of people that you meet. You get the idea, and thankfully most of the bugs have pretty much been ironed out. So Fallout New Vegas is a really good experience if you're looking for a first-person post-apocalyptic RPG. That's exactly what it is, and it really is, right now anyway, the only good game in town. Murdered Soul Suspect, 33% off. Right, I'd love to give you advice on this one, but I actually haven't got around to playing it. The review copy that we got came in late, and as a result, well, the schedule just didn't work out for it. What is it? It's a third-person detective game for the most part. You are trying to solve your own murder and, of course, the murder of others before the killer kills again. And the principle behind it is really quite interesting. It did get very mixed reviews. On PC, it did a little bit better than it did on console in terms of the critical response to it. It is probably going to be one of those games that ends up being a cult classic to genre fans that are looking for a detective mystery. There aren't that many of them to be found. There's not much combat or anything to be found there. It's mostly puzzle solving and mostly detective work. But outside of that, I really can't give you a recommendation one way or the other. Just go and read the reviews on this one and see whether or not it is going to be the sort of genre that you are going to enjoy. The PC version, though, bear in mind it's got some problems in it. It's got a bunch of QuickTime events, which is unfortunate because it also has no key customization. So the PC port does have a few issues here and there. Things like mouse smoothing's on by default, and you've got to go into the config files to fix that. As usual, PCGamingWiki.com is a good place to find fixes for that if you're interested in giving it a shot. Metro, Last Light Complete, 66% off. Alright, this is odd because usually I'd unequivocally recommend this, but Redux is coming out quite soon, actually. That makes things really awkward, because if you buy this edition, then Redux is cheaper. But if you buy this edition, you're probably not going to want to buy Redux in the first place because it's actually not that big an upgrade. Alright, here's how I do it, right? Metro is having a Redux kind of remastered edition for Last Light and Metro 2033. It sounds like 2033 is going to be a significant upgrade with the Redux package because it changes the engine to the Last Light engine, it remasters some sections, it adds new bits to the game. It really does sound like it's going to be a better game overall. Last Light was pretty good to begin with, so it seems like the improvements are going to be fairly minor. So, as a result, and bearing in mind that frankly, I've got to say that the actual DLC for this is pretty pants, honestly. It's not particularly good. It's safe to actually go for the Metro Last Light Complete Edition purchase, and you shouldn't be too concerned about Redux at this point. Now, Metro Last Light on its own costs the same as the Complete Edition, so you might as well get Complete. Like I say, it does come with the DLC. Most of that is kind of throwaway. It does come with the Ranger mode, which frankly should have been in the game in the first place, but is a really good difficulty mode that removes the HUD and it makes resources far more scarce. It's really the way to play the game, honestly. And it's easily one of the best FPS from last year. I don't even have a shadow of a doubt in saying that. It's just awesome. It was part of my top 10 for a good reason. It's extremely atmospheric. It looks absolutely gorgeous on PC. I mean, it's one of the best looking games that has ever existed. It's also a really good shooter, much better shooter than the previous title in the series. It's a bit linear. If you're expecting like more of a free roamer, I suppose, then no, you get more of a kind of Bioshock-directed experience where you can wander around a little bit, but once you go to the next bit, that's where you're going to be. But I absolutely adored it. I thought it was great. The atmosphere just drowns you. It's so very, very good. You might have to mess around a little bit with the field of view. That has to be done in the config file because by default it is actually quite low. Do bear in mind that that may cause just a slight bit of clipping on the models, but it's frankly nothing that you need to worry about. Head on over to PCGamingWiki.com for information on how to do that. You should enjoy this very much indeed if you're into atmospheric first-person shooters. And finally, Splinter Cell Blacklist, 75% off. Right, well, you're gonna have to deal with Uplay for this one, I'm afraid. I'm sorry about that. I know Uplay's not very good. It definitely isn't. I'll tell you a problem I had with Uplay with this game, actually. I tried to play this while I was on the cruise earlier in the year. I tried to play this, I thought, hey, you know, it might be a good time during my downtime to play a little bit of a single-player game. Kept losing the bloody save files. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The offline mode for this game doesn't seem to work properly. It's just absurd. And that's kind of a shame, because what I did play of it, which was the first few hours, was pretty damn good, actually. It gave you the choice of doing stealth, kind of non-lethal, and then full-on assault. And it was okay regardless of what you chose to do. Now, if you are looking for stealth only, rather than the whole stealth optional thing, a lot of the side missions that I did require full-on stealth. Like, there would be instant fails if you didn't stay hidden, which can, of course, be a bit of a problem for some people. I have no doubt about that. But those were side missions, you didn't have to do them, and for the most part, it's a really enjoyable stealth action game. At least that's my first impressions of it. And it did get a really good critical reception, and as far as I can tell, that reception is well deserved. So if you are looking for a game that involves sneaking around, but does give you the option to go loud every once in a while, then yeah, Splinter Cell Blacklist is actually pretty damn good, and of course it does have the iconic Spy versus Merc mode available, which is still very much playable indeed, thanks to a new injection of players. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the Salebox. I again apologize that this one was late and that I've been missing a couple lately. The treatments have kind of been getting in the way, so I will try and keep up as best I can. I'll see you next time.